Committee meeting of Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. Meeting is held by Zoom as allowed by law. And could I have a roll call, please? Sorry, Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, present.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron here.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan here.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, present.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, present.
Mark Maggi,
Maggi, present.
and Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton here.
and Gina Stino, present. Okay. So we are on to special town meeting warrant review. And I'm just wondering, Chris, how many of these articles are ready for prime time for us to advise
So
or
I-
recommend?
there's a couple that aren't, and I have not gotten you information, for example, on the change to the bylaw. So you have to get that next week. Capitol's meeting tonight on, I mean, you're free to talk about it, but Capitol's meeting tonight on the public safety building. So I don't
Okay.
have any of those folks available, though I'm sure that Mike Barclay could go into that, could talk more about it. And anyone who was at the meeting last night, I think got a good taste of it, but there'll be more conversation tonight at Capitol and then next week at Select Board again. So.
Okay, I did log in for a little bit, but I had to log out. I had a personal thing I had to take care of. So I didn't catch the whole discussion.
But I think the first handful are actually, I think right through the first five, I think we're probably good. And then maybe the first five of the first six. But we can start by, I can pop it up on the screen and.
Okay, that's good.
So give me just a second. My blocky computer.
Mike?
Yeah, hey, I was just making sure we have the most recent copy. We had one sent to us yesterday in anticipation of the select board meeting. Is that, I didn't see another one come through today.
Well, that's it.
9:23.
Okay, so that's the latest and greatest. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
What you're seeing now, let me just make this a little bigger.
Can't move this up for some reason. Oh, well.
The first one is as was described last week. It's just, I'm sorry, it looks like Courtney has a question, Gene.
I'm sorry. Yes, Courtney.
Jean and Chris, quickly, with regard to, I had compared the two documents, last week's version, this week's version. The informational summary is obviously still largely missing in some of the, and so,
Right.
Capital tonight with the, public safety, et cetera. Is that, do we have a time frame and those will be sort of completed?
So I expect that everything else should be, with Capital should be wrapped tonight, I hope. So that'll all be ready for you for next week. And then, again, I was delinquent in getting you language on the change in the parking bylaw. So I have to get that to you folks this last week. Lots of other things got in my way, so I apologize for that. Otherwise, I think we have a couple more unpaid bills, but the other things are pretty much locked. So we could, as we talked about it last week, and if there's anything you need more information on, just say so. And you can have it, you can defer it to next week. So,
Thank you.
Okay. And just for your information, Courtney, we continue to meet until we have gone through the whole warrant and recommended everything, whether or not the warrant has closed. Then anything that we haven't recommended yet gets added to the town manager's motions that are handed out at town meeting. So hopefully, because it's a relatively short warrant, hopefully we'll get to most everything before the closing date. Chris, can you remind me again what the closing date is? It's not October 1st. It's
yeah. So we're the select board's going to have one last meeting on October 7th, and that will be it.
October 7th.
Yeah. So
Oh, great.
So the hope is that whatever you don't get this week, we'll get next week, and we'll be good.
Right. Okay, great.
So, all right, if you're ready. So Article 1 is that the Municipal Modernization Act allowed for these creations of these revolving funds through bylaw and then just amended annually. This is a new one to be created, and it's being done now because the market would start before the end of the fiscal year if the town is going to run it again. This would just allow the money for the vendors pay to go into the fund, then go back out to pay the expenses of the market. Like they pay for, they pay for some staff to be there to help, and there's costs for some advertising they do, and then there's registration fees they have to pay and things like that. So this year we kind of improvised because we got picked up, the staff's picked up after this group of citizens passed the torch, and said we're ready to pass on. So we're hoping we'll get some citizens that said this is just a procedural thing and allow us to manage the money for the market.
Okay, and the revolving fund for $5,000, does that come out of the town initially?
No, there's no money. That's just a spending cap. The town doesn't fund this at all.
great.
This is going to be 100% funded by fees.
And I knew that, I just didn't know if this was like seed money until we
No.
had money in the fund. Okay.
No, all the funds have to have a cap put on them by law, though that's also amendable. The select board can change that during the course of a year as necessary. I can't imagine they're going to need more than $5,000, but if they did, we can always amend it during the year. But that there's no money going into this. This is just, it's setting a framework to allow money to come in and then go back out. That's all it is.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on this? Because I think it's fairly simple and we can take action on this one. If no, do I have a motion to, sorry, my screen is not syncing up right. There's messages in the top and it's just not working. So, so could I have a motion to recommend to town meeting the creation of a revolving fund for Cohasset Community Market?
So moved.
And who moved it? I'm sorry.
Mark Cameron.
Second.
Okay. Who seconded?
I did. Mike
Vince?
Barclay.
Mike
Mark
Barclay.
Sorry. Okay, so we need a roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Callahan, aye.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so that's one checked off. So Article 2 is unpaid bills of previous years, and
So we had, unfortunately, a couple got added to the list, I'm afraid. Nothing particularly huge, but they're there. And again, this is something that we have, what is going, I don't want that on my screen to play. Again, I have to be careful what I touch or I'm gonna start popping up with weather updates here. So, so the bills are as were laid out, plus there were 4 that were added at the bottom. They're all, 3 from facilities. I'm not quite sure what happened with these, but they're legitimate bills that have to be paid, and there were no encumbrances set aside for them. 3 of them involve, either supplies or services that were done for during the course of the year, and they're all pretty small. And buildings, there was a code book update for some reason that didn't get paid during the course of the year. I think all of these, the bill came late, and they weren't accounted for. So these do have to be paid, and there are funds to pay them. So, are there any questions about any of these?
Mike Barclay.
So Chris, in July we met to do, and kind of trued things up for, year-end budget transfers. So did all of these come in after that July meeting? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Because they kind of, the DPW and facilities, there seems to be, most of them are coming from the same place.
Yeah. So, I noticed that too. So, these all seem to have come in afterwards. And we also didn't have a full-time town accountant at the time. We do now, and Beth has been super intense about making sure people, and I mean that in a positive sense, making sure that people follow and stay on top of things. So I think there was just a kind of in a couple of places, just a couple of things slipped through the cracks. And I don't think they should have. I'm disappointed. That said, I think again, as you all know, we haven't had any of these in a number of years. So this has become a top item to not have happen again.
So was the kind of the miss between the DPW and the accountant, or was because the accountant wasn't there? Well, I guess again, these are all from DPW and facilities, except for
except for one. And again, I don't know that random one from Medicare, again, even if things come in July, we can pay them. So all these came in late. That's the problem. They all came in August. The books have been closed. And in fairness, Beth is closing the books tightly. And she's like, well, if there's an encumbrance, that's great. But, and normally we ask every department to ensure they set aside some money. Because there's always can be some light bills, but they need to stay on top of these things to know that, yes, I know that Montage, they did a grease fitting on a vehicle, and we know we owe about $100. And so everyone's supposed to encumber the money so it's there. And some of these, I guess, like the Medicare one, no one knew that was coming. I mean, that was just I guess some kind of a true up that Medicare said we needed to pay. The others are all things that we really that should have been caught. Now, as I said, that you're right, there's kind of a commonality. They're all coming through the same staff. Now, and also in fairness to poor Nick, they're and his team, they only have limited administrative support, and we really have to find a better way of ramping that up. We're actually going to be doing that now. We actually have an opportunity to change around a few positions because we've just had some move on to another job. So I think we're going to change a little bit how this works. And one of the things that Beth also wants to do is to ensure that these are all logged in earlier in the process so that they get caught. So there's an extra layer of review. It's like, well, wait a second. We see that, you were getting pelletized limestone. You ordered it. We didn't get a bill yet. What's going on? So she wants to add we had kind of a prior accountant finance director kind of struck a lot of those out. Beth wants to bring some of those extra checks back in, which I think is a good idea. So everyone will be required to put things in earlier in the process. So there's an extra check to make sure that things are getting covered. So,
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? All right, then I think we're ready for a motion to recommend to town meeting Article 2, unpaid bills of previous years. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, 2 people. So who wants to move,
Vince.
who wants to second it?
I'll second it.
And Mark Cameron, did you move it?
Yes.
Okay,
And Chris, do you mind letting my other device in? I'm gonna switch devices here.
You can do that. It's an extra fee for a second device.
Sure, I could. As long as it's on the right fiscal year.
I see you. Yes, exactly. It's a bill. It's a device of prior year. I don't know if I can let you in.
okay, so we
You should
have
be
a
in.
motion and a second. We need a roll call. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, aye.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so we're on to number 3, stabilization funds.
So as I mentioned last week, this is the only one we have going in, but this follows our policy for contributions to the OPEB fund, and this covers the deferred amount we had from annual town meeting. We've historically put $350 in the fall, but we deferred 98.5 from the spring. So adding that back in, the total is 448.5, and this keeps us current with the town's policy for funding OPEB.
Any questions? Okay, so do I have a motion to recommend Article 3 stabilization funds to special town meeting?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
So that was Courtney and Mark Maggi.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, aye.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Jean Astino, aye. Just dropped my hearing aid. It's not really a hearing aid. It's a hearing helper. Okay. So next is Article 4, capital improvements projects.
The capital's meeting on this now, so, if you want to defer till next week and after they've reviewed,
Yes, I think that that's a good idea. Okay,
okay. And the only one that was, I think was on last time, was this trench drain. I was talking more to Brian Joyce about that. There's drains in the garages that capture oil and other things, so it doesn't get anything, it gets filtered out. They discovered there was some rot in them that they need to be replaced, so we stay compliant. They need to get done now before the winter, because there's obviously a lot more junk that goes in there, salt and everything else during the course of the winter. They clean off the trucks, so that's been reviewed by Capital tonight, and the other is that diesel. So the school, there was an electric bus that the schools had acquired through a grant. Unfortunately,
didn't work right.
yeah, unfortunately, there was a series of problems with the company. So that pilot project is going to end, and the schools need another bus. So they've requested that the funding that was allocated in the spring for the electric bus lease will convert to diesel. The bus lease for electric was actually 25. This is only 22,682. So it's actually a little bit of a savings. So, but they're going to review it tonight. I don't think there's anything particularly controversial about that, but that's what's there.
Okay, so we'll wait. This one?
Yeah, right. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Chris, just a couple of questions on that one though. Just
Sure.
did we actually pay the lease on the electric? Or
No, the money's still there. The money was not paid.
It failed pretty quickly. And then the company went out of business, is that right, Chris?
No, the company hasn't. So their charging station unit went out of business, but the main
Okay.
company has not gone out of business. Though we've had the charging station was kind of critical to the project because it needed a level 3 charger for this thing, and it was supposed to come with it. So yeah, the money was not released to them. So
and the bus is still here in town.
yeah, I don't believe it's been. We're in the process of trying to negotiate a turn back with them. So I believe it's still in our possession. Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So Chris, if we were just going with the electric bus lease, that would be for the 25. So instead of that, it's the diesel for 22,682.
Right. So this was money that was actually approved back in the spring. So it's just going to be a reallocation. So it'll actually save a little bit of money, and it'll go back, and the remainder will end up going back into their capital reserve for the fall or next year.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
March.
I didn't put it in here because I have to find the actual the name, the number of the resolution, but in the warrant, in the motion, it'll say repurposing money from the spring of annual town meeting in May 2025. For this, so it's not new money. It's just repurposed old money.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, so we will move along to Article 5, Joseph Osgood Elementary School roof.
I think Tracy distributed some materials. I hope it included materials on this. The town was approved roughly a year ago into the MSBA's, the Massachusetts School Building Authority's, something called an accelerated repair program, which is designed to maintain buildings in usable shape for as long as possible. It's things like roofs and windows and boilers, really big things. The Osgood School became eligible. The town has a pretty, Nick Berardi and his team have a pretty robust program for managing and assessing the roofs. We had a lot of good materials. We applied, we were accepted. The town approved the first phase last fall, and that was the assessment and the design, or I should say the assessment, and then led into the design. This would be for the actual project. So it's now been schematically designed and has to be prepared for bid, and then go out to bid. So the bid, I don't know if the bids will be finalized until after the town meeting. That said, this is the absolute maximum that the project should cost. And it includes a few other things. It includes some ADA accessibility things and some skylights. So these are all things that are covered. The town's reimbursement rate so the total max amount that MSBA has set, then it's a very structured process. It's 5,858,522. The town's percentage reimbursement is 32.4% of eligible approved costs. So that's a max of $1,902,000, or 32.47%. So obviously, if the project costs come down, then the reimbursement comes down, but it'll match the 32.47% of the reimbursement rate. So this is ready to go. The school fund, the town voted 2 years ago to create a school special stabilization fund, and $1.5 million went in the first year, and then $1.5 million plus 2.5% went in for the year we're in. So that there's still some money in the fund, but not enough for $5 million. So, or for our piece. So what'll happen is there'll be the next phase will happen. You know, the bidding and the final construction documents, the bidding, and then in the spring, after this is approved, there'll be the bid will be awarded, and the construction will happen hopefully in June and July next, or I should say July, probably July, August next year after school's closed. It shouldn't be a terribly long project, but it'll be, and then so hopefully it'll be wrapped up by the end of August, and then we'll finish paying the bills. And at that point, special town meeting will then, in the fall of next year, we'll be asked to allocate the remaining amount. So the whole project will have been funded by the special stabilization fund. I believe it's 2.6 million is available today. So there'll be another $1 million plus that'll have to be allocated. So, and again, there'll be the option for the authorization for borrowing just allows the town to lend itself money if it needs to. That we don't actually ever have to go to borrow, but that allows the town, if we needed to cover a gap, if we had to pay the bills, for example, in September, and special town meeting was going to be in October and November, the town then could front the money, and then we'll get reimbursed back out of the school special stabilization fund. Questions of me? I think there's at least two.
Mike Flaherty was first, and then Mike Barclay.
Yeah, so just a question on the wording. I see, it looks to me like the MSBA program is like a statutory type program, but I see the wording says may. So if we extend on it, are we guaranteed to get the reimbursement depending on how much the project costs? Or could the MSBA somehow deny it and say something?
So that's a good question. The answer is, at this point, they're pretty much committed to this. Obviously, we still have to follow their rules, right? So as long as we're following their rules and following the process, we get the reimbursement at the rate of 32.47%. If we break the rules, then that's different. But this is a very structured process. We followed all the rules. We followed all the forms. Where we actually, you have to retain a project manager from their list, which was done. You have to bid in a certain way under their jurisdiction. So we're going to do all of those things. So we will get whatever that reimbursement rate is. And again, it may not be 1.9, it may be less, but it's going to be 32.4%, right, of the project. So does that answer your question?
It does. I'm technical on this stuff, so I like to say the town will receive reimbursement, assuming it follows the proper procedures, blah, blah, blah. I don't, may means, well, the MSBC could, or MSBA might do something or something. That's I'm just being technical on
No. It's a fair point. So this language is what the MSBA says we have to use. So that is part of the process. They actually tell you how the motion has to read.
Okay. So I guess we're following the rules.
We're following the rules right through the motion. So
Mike Barclay.
Chris, I'm just trying to work through kind of the timing of how this all gets paid out. So the language says borrow or transfer from available funds. So we have the stabilization fund set up already. That has 2.6 million in it currently.
something like that, yeah.
And then we're going to rely on the next year allocation to that, which is another 1.5 million, I guess.
Correct.
So it's really, in theory, we're not borrowing, right? Because
Well,
the 2.6 plus the 1.5 should cover the net of 3.956, right?
so yes, we will actually probably not borrow anything. That said, we have to have the authorization to borrow in order to if the town needs to pay the bills in advance, because that money won't be released from the special stabilization fund until town meeting actually releases it. And that can't happen until the fiscal year. One of the things we've learned about these special stabilization funds is that, unlike a budget, in May, we're adopting a budget for the prior year for money that doesn't yet exist, but we know it's coming. Even though this fund is on the tax rolls, the state does not allow you to actually use any of it until the year in which it actually is taxed.
Gotcha.
Or years later, if you can build you can build money in the fund.
So then next May or June, whenever town meeting is, we'll have a vote to release the monies from the stabilization fund to fund this specific project. And
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, and I was just gonna ask, and in terms of the 32.47, how does that get paid? Does that get paid up front, pro rata, at the end? When does that reimbursement happen?
So the first part of the question is, what'll happen is that the first amount of money will be allocated at town meeting this fall. So that chunk of $2.6 million will be in the motion for this article in the fall. It will say this much money plus, and also the information summary will be added to say that, the funding, all the funding will be coming over time from the school special stabilization fund. The question is, if the project's done in August, we don't have a special town meeting till, let's say, November. Do we have to pay the bills by October? And then if we do, the town would have to front the money and then the fund would pay it back in a month. So when there will never be, the plan is never to actually literally borrow and go to the market, but that allows the town, because there's a borrowing authorization in place, to kind of front the money to itself.
Yeah, okay.
So that's all, it's something that we do from time to time. That's what we're doing with the town hall project, actually. So when we run out of money that's already there, we'll front money until we go to market in the spring next year. And then that we want to start paying for the year after that. So.
Okay.
And in terms of I believe it's a reimbursement, Mike, I think it's a reimbursement on as project, I think you file along, I'm not super well versed in this, but I know that our town accountant is. So I'm sure there's a lag in this just because that's the way it always seems to work with them. That said, it's a percentage of all project costs. So I know there's some degree of phasing. I know there's going to be another phase that will be coming up in terms of, the design, the final construction documents and the bidding. So I think we'll be able to get reimbursement for a piece of that in the spring. That's my understanding.
Okay.
That said, we will be made whole by the end of the project.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and then not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but then Deer Hill will be next on the list, presumably.
That's the expectation. So you can't have more than one application active at a time. So
Right.
we wouldn't be able to apply for that for at least another year. That said, the school has a application to the core program. The core program is for the building or renovation of whole schools, and that's for the middle high school. And that application is live, and we should hear about that around Thanksgiving or early December. And that's a complicated process, if that. But it's not for tonight. But that. So.
Been through it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Then are we ready to make a motion, Chris, you think?
I think you are, but yeah,
Okay.
I hope you are.
No, I just want to make sure that there's nothing else that has to happen before we do it.
No, this is a very structured process, and this is just the next step in it. So.
Yep. Okay, so do I have a motion to recommend Article 5, Joseph Osgood Elementary School roof to special town meeting?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, so we need a roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Callahan, I.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay, so then Article 6. We ready on this one? It's a public safety building.
No, you're gonna. I mean, again, if you want to talk about it now, you're free to. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if. Let me take.
does anybody have any-
There's no point having this team.
I know that there was a meeting last night.
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen discussed a couple of different things, so, and there have been meetings on this. But does anybody have any questions? Has anybody attended any of these? Courtney?
Thank you, Jean. I was able to watch the select board meeting last night. I thought it was very informative. Appreciate all the work that went into, the presentation and the many things. And Chris, I know you've pointed us to the website. I have tried to go through as much of the materials as I could. One of the things, and I think I've seen this, and if somebody could just set me straight or send me to the information, with regard to post the approval of this particular project, is there an estimate for Elm, or is Elm included in that project or not? I feel like I'm getting a little bit of conflicting information when I've read a couple things. And what, if any, operating budget projections have been put forth, because 2 facilities is different than running 1 facility? Right, so those are the 2 kind of things that I just couldn't put my hands on anywhere.
So
And it's probably, I probably just was not looking.
no. Those are there's been ongoing conversation about all this. So the first answer to the first question is there is an estimate for Elm. The select board didn't get into it at depth. They're going to next week, but there's an estimate for Elm itself. I believe the current operating plan is to handle it a bit like town hall's being handled, where chunks are being where there's a kind of a plan for it, because the physical building is not going to change. It's not going to, the shape of it's just going to be repurposed. Rooms will be repurposed and all. So so the plan there's a top, and again I if you went and looked at the town hall project restriction, I think that's up on the website. There's a kind of a schematic. In fact, Mark Cameron helped a lot with putting some of that together. There's a big tick, a list of plumbing work or electrical work or that, the roof, that kind of stuff, right? I believe there's something that'll be all discussed. I don't know if it's being discussed tonight at Capitol, but I know for sure it'll be discussed next week, next Tuesday. And that would not be part of that's not part of the public vote. That'll be funded through through the town's regular capital plan. That's the plan, at least at this point. In terms of operating, yeah. So obviously there would be another building, right? So there's not an expectation of any additional staff, so there won't be any more staff in this, but there will be additional costs for electricity and cleaning and that sort, and I guess even for building insurance, right? So and those would come into effect for I think the 28 operating if this gets approved, and again there's a town meeting vote that has to take place, and then there'll be another public vote for a debt exclusion for the additional amount, which I think is tentatively set. The select board will set it next week for sure, but we're looking at November 15th for that public vote. So the town meeting will be November 3rd. So the construction would begin, because the bids are all set, in January, and I think it's a year and a half. So it would be ready theoretically by the beginning of FY28. So that would have to be built in the FY28 operating budget. So I think long before then, we'll know what the systems are and what the expectations are for utility costs and those kinds of things, which will have to be built in. I think the cleaning is fairly simple, and then the insurance. So it's a new building. Hopefully, it won't cost a lot for repairs for a while. I don't think there'll be a very major impact on the operating budget. There will be another building to insure.
Right.
There'll be some additional utility costs.
And so I guess, and Chris, if it's, we can take this offline if these are just my questions, but I'm trying to figure out, part of the value, and there are many values to this project. I don't dispute that, but part of it, as I looked at one of the slides that was shown last night, is the response times and the impact of the commuter rail. And we all understand that. Some of us live on one side, some of us live on the other. I get that. And what I'm just sort of thinking is how are we not staffing both locations for emergency response from a fire perspective? And how does that not add more headcount, I guess, is sort of where I'm challenged.
Right. So I again, I think Chief Dockery has to talk about this more himself. That said, the as I understand it, and again, I don't want to get ahead of him or anybody else. most of what the fire department does is ambulance calls, right? I mean, I'm not saying there aren't fire calls. But thankfully, they're comparatively minor compared to paramedic calls. And the fact is that most of the calls that we get on a regular basis are in and around the 3A corridor. That's where most people are during the daytime. And that's where that's where Evoke is. There are inpatient drug treatment centers. Your Sunrise Assisted Living is. The schools are on that side. All the schools are on that side of the tracks. They're really much closer to the site from an access point of view. And that's where the Shaw's is. That's where Stop and Shop is. That's where Route 3 is, right? So the accidents are off those accidents, right? So I think the Chief Docker's plan is to have the primary ambulance staff out of there during the daytime for sure. Again, there's more conversation to be had and more data to be looked at, but I think that's the proposal, is to have that staff during the day for sure, the ambulance. And that's the primary response, right? That's where, I'm not saying minutes don't count for a fire, because they most certainly do. That said, for medical calls, it's particularly timely, and that will put more of the town at an easier reach. The town's been talking about a 3A station for at least 50 years. And we found a study from 1974. And I think it goes back, Tom's nodding his head. I think it goes back before that. So finding a spot on 3A was critically important, just from the town, just where the town's evolved to. The other fundamental issue on the police side is that the current station just doesn't work anymore. And there was a tour, and there's another tour being scheduled. So I'd love to get people in there. I know Chief Quigley would love to show people what's really in there. Apart from the fact that we're about to get a critical violation on our jail cells, which do not meet any code and comply, we're in potentially great legal liability if anyone ever got hurt. The station just doesn't fit anymore. I mean, it was designed, as I think the chief said, in 1962 for like 9 staff members, and we now have 19 full-time sworn officers, and not that they're all the time. That said, there are women and men. There were no women back then on the staff, and there are women on the staff, period, much less as officers. There's higher standards for evidence, and crimes are more complicated. There's a need to do interviews. There's a lot more drugs and domestics and mental health issues, and there's just a need for space and the ability to meet with people. There's also a need to do virtual, which is good to do virtual hearings. Right now, the officers are doing some of those virtual hearings in their cruisers, as opposed to in a room somewhere, right? Which is, I mean, you make it work, right? I mean, that's what they do. At the same, it's not really an optimal way of handling these things. So the goal is to build a station that'll last, and that lasted 50 years. I mean, to its credit, right? It was built in the very early 60s, and it's now 2025. The goal is for this station to go another generation, right? Hopefully 25, 30, 40 years. In terms of fire, again, we talked about it a little before. So there's having another, and by the way, having another facility to stage from in case there was ever a problem is actually a good thing anyway, just to have it. If there was a storm or anything really bad. I mean, one of the realities is that, the villages, if you actually look at flood maps, is in a really bad flood situation, which we have never had. It's technically a flood a possibility. When they built that, when it was built 200 plus years ago, they filled in wetlands and they built the village. So having another facility that's up on 3A, and again, the emergency management center would be there. Right now, that's in the basement of the Deer Hill School. It was a great use at the time, but it's kind of outgrown it, and it's not. We've had to use it during school days, and it's not a good idea to have an emergency operations center going in the basement of an elementary school. So there's lots of components that make that facility really important. That said, I think both chiefs can speak to any of the specific questions. There's got to be a big public meeting in October for sure. Again, if anyone would like to tour the facility, you can reach out to the chief directly or to my office, and we can plug you into a tour, because I know they'd love to have anybody over there.
Thank you.
Okay. Mark Cameron and then Mike Barclay.
Yeah, I was able to attend the select board meeting last night and see the presentation there, and one more so comments rather than specific questions for Chris here in the team, but is, we've got some operational questions to understand how the intricacies of how this is going to function. There's a whole operation, whether it be the program, what's going to be repurposed for the space at Deer Hill, where's the primary ambulance going to be around, how are we going to understand how that operates, the facility costs, all these kind of granular specific items that we need to understand. Plans for Elm Street, the cost of Elm Street, what that's going to look like, and Capital's commitment to then fund that in the forthcoming years. We know that some of the debt roll off from the senior center was, to solve town hall. The roll off from the senior center was captured by town hall. So how are we going to then commit to being able to fund the renovation of a fire station on Elm Street through that? And I think all of these questions we've seen from other projects, whether it be town hall or One Pleasant, or whatever it may be, right? If these questions aren't fully flushed out, even something like the dump enterprise fund last time. I mean, if these questions are not fully flushed out by town meeting and get out to the general public, the chances of these things getting through become problematic. And we sit here all with a variety of questions, roughly about a month out from town meeting, which we then need to, which we all here on this call are intently paying attention to it. So we've got to think about the people that are not quite so active in the participation and thinking about, we need to message this to them. And I can, from a construction standpoint, I could totally appreciate having the winter for procurement and getting through to be able to hit the ground running in the spring. But I just question, do we have enough time to educate the masses and answer all of these questions between now and town meeting?
I mean, the reality is the bids won't hold. We have to go back to bid. I mean, that's just.
And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. And if the plans don't change, then all the bidders that have done their work, they can rebid it. I mean, they've already done the work. They just need to put a new date on it.
The problem, I wish it was that simple, Mark. I think there's a lot of concerns about the town not being viewed seriously in the market. And the town hall project is one example of that, where the town went up to the plate again and again and then step back out. And, I don't think that the project is I mean, if anything, it could get more expensive.
But it certainly is going to get more expensive. I mean, but again, if we can't communicate with the residents what's going to happen and what the future of Elm Street is, it's not going to go through. Right? It's going to just, it's going to be another project that we didn't have all the answers for. And it just dies. And then we go back to the drawing board and we talk about, we hear about the plans in the drawers for previous projects. Well, now we have an asset that we have to maintain, that we actively own, that we have plans for that didn't get approved. So I think, serious consideration might want to be put into the approach, given the time that we have.
That's it. You made a statement, so thank you. I appreciate it. And by the way, there's most certainly a great need to educate and also to cut through some of the fog. I mean, by the way, people most certainly have there's most certainly a window of questions. There's been a lot of information that's been thrown out there that just is untrue, and it's very disappointing. People that want to pay more in taxes, I get it. The fact is that the police station is functionally not working anymore. And this is not even a situation of town hall, which, as for all the challenges, it was office space. The police work 24/7, and they provide a critical public safety service. And what they're working in is not acceptable space. I don't think there's any debate about that. I don't think there's any legitimate debate about it. And I would hope that, and it did get voted on 2 years ago. Now, in fairness, the price has gone up, and that's the reason we have to go back to the voters again. Right? It's a fair, but it's also that the price has gone up. That said, the basic scope and plans that were discussed 2 years ago haven't changed. The basic needs and concerns have not changed. That said, any help you want to give, and please, you talk to Michelle. Any assistance you can offer, any direction would be greatly appreciated to make sure that we get the message out as far as we can. And then people make their decisions.
You good, Mark?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. Mike Barclay.
So I listened to the select board meeting last night, and I went back and listened to the capital committee meeting last week, where they spent, the better part of 2 hours going over this, and they're deliberating on it again tonight. I echo everything Mark says 110%. I mean, there are so many details that need to be socialized. You know, Chris, you rambled off a bunch of needs. We know there's a need at the police station. We know that. But you rambled off a bunch of stuff and you were scratching the surface. Like there needs to be a document put together that highlights every single need, why this is important, why the scope has changed. You know, I get it. You know, how did we get from 10.4 to 28? You know, like I said last week, you got to walk us through that. And I get it. You know, when we originally looked at this 2 years ago, we didn't realize the whole building had to be a level 4 building and we didn't own it. And so we couldn't go in and make that determination. And, you know, there's a bunch of just questions that, you know, again, I listened to the select board meeting. I listened to the Capitol meeting. You know, I'm pretty informed. We're all pretty informed, yet there's a list of questions that's, you know, longer than I can even imagine. And, you know, if those don't get socialized and they don't get answered for the average citizen and taxpayer who doesn't have the time to do this due diligence, it's not going to pass. It may pass at town meeting, but it's not going to pass at the poll. I agree with Mark. You know, given how much time we have until town meeting, this is a really heavy lift to get the information out and educate. And yeah, you make a good point. Yes, there are some things being said that aren't true, but there's an awful lot of stuff that people just don't understand. And with a lack of information, that's what's going to happen. Is you're going to leave it open to speculation. And, you know, we were just talking about the fire station and there would only be an ambulance over there on King Street. Well, then why in the fire area did they build it 2 stories high to accommodate a fire truck?
Yeah,
I don't want to, this isn't a debate, Chris, okay?
No, I'm not trying to debate you.
We all know there's a need. I am, you know, Mark and I have been the liaison to public safety. We understand this intimately, how bad this need is. I've toured the station. It is, you know, it is bad. But, you know, almost 40% of the people voted against this at the poll last time. Yes, it passed town meeting, but when people get into the poll, you know, how much is this going to cost the median taxpayer? Do we have that number? I mean, how do we put this into a form where the average taxpayer can understand specifically what the impact is to them, along with Elm Street, along with Deer Hill, along with potentially a school? You know, there is a larger capital plan that this has to be also fit into. And so we want this we want the police and fire to have what they need. But we have to be realistic about what we believe can get done. And that is my biggest concern right now. And we need more information. We just need every piece of information possible that is put into a document that can be put out for the general public to see, so everybody has those questions answered and you're not leaving stuff to speculation.
So what I would ask of you is to look at the information that's on the town website and document what it is that you think is missing. That would be the most helpful thing that you could do, because a whole lot of questions were raised and responded to over the summer. And that said, and there's been work done, but there's more work that needs to be done. There's no question about it. I think it's important. Again, it's not my fire station. It's the town of Cohasset's fire station. It's critically important that as much information get out there and as set away as possible. Now, I don't think that months will help anything. I don't think anyone's attention span is going to spend months paying attention to the station. There's been a change. It got voted. By the way, there's always going to be people opposed. You can be. I think 60-40 was a pretty impressive number, quite frankly. I was actually impressed at how well it won. All 3 of them that won that on that ballot won by the same margin, basically. The schools and the roads and sidewalk stabilization fund.
I don't know, given the importance of public safety, I don't think a 60-40 spread is all that great, Chris. I'll disagree with you there. I mean, public safety is critical. Schools, public safety, these are what define a town. And if you don't have great public safety, that's a problem. And so, look, we can agree to disagree on this. Gene, I think we need to try to talk to Capitol. Let's see what they have to say after their meeting tonight. You know, they have a whole list of questions as well. And I just think, time is short and we need information, Chris. I'm going to step aside because I know there are
No,
others.
and again, I am, all I'm saying is that any questions you have should be filtered, should be passed on through, and then, and it should be, put out there. So if there's questions that you don't see answers to, please make sure that we know them. I'm not here to present this plan tonight. The reason that everyone's over at the Capitol meeting tonight. So,
I think that part of the problem is that people are getting their news on Facebook, and that's not a good idea. There's no newspaper here anymore, so there's no way to disseminate information to the majority of the town. I can't even believe some of the stories that I'm seeing and some of the plans that I'm seeing that residents think are a better idea than what an architect has put together, and what answers the questions for ADA compliance and a bunch of other questions. So we have to figure out a way to get the information to the public. And we can't just keep saying, well, check the website, because I checked the website for something related to the RTF and I can't find it. And I know it's there, but your general everyday person can't find it if I can't. So we have to figure out a better way to get the information to the public also, once we do have that list of questions and answers. So, but I'm gonna defer and let Diane, she's had her hand up for a while. I'm glad you're safe and no longer on the side of Route 3. So
I'm no longer on the side of Route 3. And since I missed the whole 40 minutes leading into this, I'll just say I want to echo everything Mike and Mark said. I've been at this for 15 years and I want to be able to advocate for the projects that I know are critical for the town, and this is one of them. However, I think there is a lot of missing information. I made the mistake of going back and listening to the capital budget presentation from 2023, when we had taken some time to do a financial, a long-range financial and capital planning discussion and plan, and that's what brought us to this point where we were going to spend or ask the town for $10 million and actually fit a building into a number. And there was a lot of pushback from capital budget at the time. Like, you're just making up a number and you're going to fit a building into it. And it was like, no, that's what we can do. That's what we have the capacity financially to do, knowing that we have these other projects in the pipeline ahead of us. And I think we just, now that we're at threefold of a cost, I think it is going to require a little more due diligence and public discussions. I don't pay attention to 143, as you well know. And I'm on the advisory committee and I was on the select board for, 12 years. So I'm relatively plugged into the numbers, and, this is really one of the first discussions we've had about this very significant cost. And the other thing is, literally, I do think every project needs to be spelled out in terms of the impact it has to the taxpayers and what's next in line, because we can't keep saying, it's not flavor of the month club, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to prioritize and advocate the projects that we need and let the community know what is forthcoming. So everybody before me said what I wanted to say, and I'm sorry that I was late and missed some of the earlier discussion, but well, I'm here to help make things work, but I do think we need more information for this to pass.
Thank you.
Again, I think I would just reiterate, if the specific things that you think are missing and need to be out there, please just share that and say, well, I thought about this or this or this. Please make sure that that's socialized with Michelle and the chiefs and my office, and we'll make sure that we get as much as we can up there.
Right.
Share with me now.
I'll just say two things right away. One is the tax impact.
Yeah.
What's next? When are you going to come and ask money for the schools? Because we know that, what happens if we get accepted into the Mass School Building Association and we have another massive school project? I mean, we need to just be honest that these are the things happening.
Well,
and the other question I just have specifically is just in terms of the cost, the delta from what we approved in 2023, which was 10.5, I believe, and that included about 2.5 to purchase the building.
Right.
the delta is actually the construction costs, is $18 million. So where do we go from the 2.5 that we use to spend, what's the 2.5, and then there's 7.5. Where's the 7.5 of new money? Because it's pretty well spelled out in the bids in terms of what the extra 18 is. But what's the 7.5 that was originally approved?
Last night's presentation showed it was like, the FF&E, the contingencies, all of that got swallowed up through that 7.5.
Okay.
Design, project management.
Yeah, I jumped in late last night, so I didn't hear that.
Okay, Mark Maggi, and then Mark Cameron.
I'm going to be a little redundant to what the three previous folks have said, but I'll just say that I explicitly come at this from a position of someone that wants this to succeed, despite the 3x cost change. And I don't think doing this now is going to lead it to succeed. I don't mean to sound fatalistic. I think this is doomed through no one's lack of effort, through no one's good intentions. I think we have a bit of a credibility problem. We have not got a large project across the line close to the cost we said it would get across the line for in a long, long time. We've taken at least 3 swings at town hall and failed. I stood up and advocated for version 2 or 3 of town hall. Mike Barclay stood up and advocated for the first version of this, and we're nowhere close to what Mike got up in the gym and told the town we were going to do here. There's reasons we're not close. That's fine. Like, we can explain that. I don't know that we can do it in the time frame we have before this town meeting. And these things get a stink on them. If it fails once, it's really, really hard to run it back and say, no, this time it's different, because it's going to be more expensive, because everything with time is more expensive. In 6 months and it's more expensive, but we have all our ducks in a row, there's a couple reasons for that. But if it fails now and we try again 6 months or a year later and it's even more expensive and it's already failed once, I don't think it ever happens. And now we own this thing that the town refuses to turn into what we need it to be. I have real serious concerns about this. And I don't think, again, we could stay on this call from now until town meeting. And I don't know that we would figure out what we need to get this past the town meeting or the polls.
Mark Cameron.
I'll just add that, Chris, I would say something that we need is more information on Elm Street. I just went on the town's website. There's nothing other than condition assessments, which is all data we know about. We strongly support the need there because of the current conditions, but there's no drawings, there's nothing, no framework to understand what's happening on that campus at all. No budget, no drawings, no nothing. So that would be one thing. And then just to the point of the 60-40 split with the votes, that was for a project, public safety project at $10 million. And now we're asking for $17-18 million above and beyond that. So that 60-40 could easily go the other way. And correct me if I'm wrong, but at town meeting, this needs 2/3, not just majority, correct?
Correct.
So keep that in, we should keep that in mind. That's another component. Thanks.
Okay, people have their hands up. Mark Maggi, you still got your hand up? Okay, Mike Barclay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was looking back at the financial planning working group report from 2 years ago. And so it said the median home tax increase would be $220 for 30 years for 10.4 million. So, I mean, rates are different. I think they're a little bit lower than they were then, but, the math would say that this is, this 28 million is probably more like $600 a year for 30 years for the median, home. And look, I don't think, public safety is important. I would be in favor of having what we need for, for this higher price. But it's not me you have to convince. It's, several thousand other people, and time's short.
There is an Elm Street plan that should be released next week. It's been discussed at length, and you're right, it has to be out, and and there are numbers. And again, it's structured a lot like town meeting like town hall. I mean, it's not gonna, you know, there's no big architectural summary. The building's not gonna change physically. There'll be some repairs and stuff done, but there's not gonna be any demolition and reconstruction. It's gonna be repair in place, roofs and stuff like that. So that's there. And in terms of, you know, there's a lot of conversations going on, and that'll all continue to happen. Thank you. I obviously, this is going to be a big conversation, and sometimes deadline pressure is very helpful. I mean, I've watched good projects, come up to the plate and succeed, and I've seen them not succeed. I can tell you that I've not yet seen time help any project. That did not help Town Hall. I watched that die 4 times. Different scenarios, by the way. And what ended up happening, ended up pulling together, but it was a different plan. There's no repairs that can be done to fix the police station. It's not gonna work. There's no way to fix that building, to make it work for the police.
But again, I would just stress, what was the commonality between these projects that didn't get them to pass, right? And it's the unanswered questions, I think, that is the smoking gun. So there, you know, no people weren't saying we don't need town hall. Maybe some people were, but again, the commonalities here is what's important. And you know, right. We're human. We make mistakes, right? But it's learning from the mistakes. And if we don't appreciate the torture that we've put ourselves through with these other projects to see how they have failed, and we do it again, we're going to expect a different result.
No. A plan for them has to be presented. It's going to be presented, and it's real, and it has real.
Also needs time to be socialized, and that's what I'm stressing is running out, because
Well, you know, I hear you. I just we're talking. You know, you're right. I hear you, and you know, that's what the next few weeks are going to determine is whether it's going to click on this timeline or not. Again, I have yet to see a project that gets deferred succeed. The extra time rarely helps. Now, that said, a lack of information always hurts. I'm 100% with you. So I think a lot of the questions that have been raised have answers. And some of them have already been socialized, but apparently not very well. And there's going to be a couple of big public forums to talk through all of these things. And hopefully that'll be sufficient. That said, I think, please share anything. I mean, anything is good. The questions have already been raised, the specific things that are missing, and there's avenues to which you think. The chiefs have already been out there. They've been meeting with organizations in town for weeks, answering questions in small groups all around town. So they're going to continue to do that. That said, and there'll be a couple of big public meetings for people that'll be on Facebook, that'll be on the TV station, that'll be covered in the anchor. But that said, if the specific information that seems to be lacking, please just ask for it and ask where it is, and I'll do the very best we can to make sure that it's up and out there. So
I need to excuse myself for 1 minute. Diane, if you want to speak, I'll be right back.
I just have a quick question, which I don't think has been covered, which is the Elm Street projections for the renovations that are going to need to take place. Is that going to be part of this financial request and ask on this warrant?
I don't think so. I think the plan is going to be to handle it much like Town Hall was, because no work can be done on that for 2 years. I mean, until the new building is built, you can't really do work on Elm. It can't be done because it's still fully occupied. So when the police move out, it's kind of a stage thing, right? Then you can do work to do the renovations that will expand the use of fire on the Elm Street side. That said, that's all been discussed and looked at. So that would take place over probably 2 or 3 years. So we're talking about a project that would go into the 2030s.
And yet, to Mark's point, Mark Cameron's point earlier, you know, we should be able to project that. We should be able to go and be honest about, this is covering this. We know we're going to be coming back to you for a couple mil or whatever it is to do, you know, and it's probably going to be, you know, plus whatever, 50%, 100% in 3 years. But right now, the best guess we can. I mean, we need to both trust and have faith in our community to take in this information and really understand it. It's when we don't give it to them that, you know, it's like, what do you think? We're chumps? Like, let's just be honest about what we need to do to keep our community, you know, our buildings safe and functional, and you know, it's all been said. Thank you.
No, I'm agreeing with you. So, I'm not.
Mike,
You have another question, Mike?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just one last point, just where the need for a long-term capital plan becomes so important is that what we don't want is people thinking one project is competing against another.
Mhm.
Whether it's schools or public safety, you know, these are critical infrastructure projects, and they're needed. And that, you know, that could be, you know, I think, you know, the town hall project was doomed a little bit about, you know, because of that, because there was a sense that it might be competing with other projects in the town. And that's where, you know, having this plan mapped out and is also critically important. And, you know, Chris, at a very high level, it's like, what is the need? Okay. Somebody, the fire chief, the police chief, you know, what has changed about the need from 2 years ago to now? Specifically, what are all the items? And there's a lot of very legitimate ones, given where technology has gone, what the change in, the processing and things like that. These are all legitimate needs, but you know, people need to see them. They need to be able to read them, look at them, soak them in, and then believe them. Along with, we get it. Yes, stuff goes up over time, and that's just going to be a fact of life, the cost, you know. But specifically, how did we get from the 10.4 to 28? You know, what exactly, you know, the Sally Port, which we didn't think we needed, or whatever. It needs to be, the more granular you can get on the delta, like I said last week, between 10.4 and 28. You got to have that. So you got to get people numbers. You got to demonstrate the need, and you know, and then you need time. And I don't agree that I would rather wait 6 months and come 100% prepared than go quickly and not be prepared. I think, you know, I'll take the under on that one.
I don't disagree with you. At the same time, I have never seen a project where someone still didn't have another question, or even when you answered all the questions you thought you've answered, right? So the question is there enough time to get there for November? That's the question, and that's the question everyone has to answer. And all of you, because this is a committee structured government. It's the select board's capital, it's you folks, and saying, hey, what are we doing? How can we make this work? Right now, the select board says, yes, they think they can. That said, this is not, the conversation is far from over. There's a lot of additional work that's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. There just has to be. Since you're not going to do anything more with this tonight, can we continue with the rest of the warrant? Was that?
Yes.
Okay.
Article 7, creation of an enterprise fund for recycling and transfer facility.
I have Brian here. If anyone has any questions, let me see if I can get him to.
You have one?
I have Brian Joyce here. If anyone had any questions.
Okay.
Yes, here he comes. All right. So I won't put the screen up. I think it's a simple. There's I think a fairly extensive page of information. There's been 2 public sessions about this, plus select board conversations. And I have Brian here to answer any more questions that anyone has about the RTF or where we are, or this particular proposal. Again, in substance, it's to create what amounts to an accounting structure around the RTF. So it runs as a standalone operation with the revenues to come in, paying for it, and it paying for own expenses. What makes an enterprise fund different than a revolving fund is that it lives. It's a more robust structure. You can set aside money for capital, and that's one of the things that I think is really important. Because in fairness, I don't think there was a lot of investments made in that RTF for a really long time, because quite frankly, it's not something that was a top priority anywhere in the budget. And it needed to be, and the fire forced a conversation and a really hard look at how we did things and what we're investing in. That said, there's more work that kind of need to be done. And I think there's a fair argument to be made that the money should be collected from the fees and all that going to make the place run. Because to compete for a trash compactor and repairs to a science classroom, it's never, that's not the kind of debate you want to have. This should be funded separately and apart. There's a structure for it. The state recognizes it, and most ITFs in the state are set up this way. If we really want to run this the way it should be, it really needs to have its own funding source and its own expense ledger that's off budget, with its own budget, with its own sets of fees and expenses. As I say that, I am Brian, and it looks like Mark has a question.
I just want to add one comment and then one very quick question. My biggest question was, how much was this going to cost the average homeowner? And I was happy to find that there is a list finally online, which I was not able to find until today. So I see what the cost will be, the new sticker price.
Mhm.
What's the bag price? Because people online keep asking that. How much is it? to go up to the bag?
$2 and $4. That's going to go into effect, I think, in November 1, Brian, if I recall. right?
November 1, yeah, it was the select board voted. So yeah, the little bags will go from $1 to $2. And,
Double the cost of the bags.
Yeah.
And
correct.
so
Yeah,
it
from
helps
$2 to $4.
of the sticker.
And just one thing, and we've done this to the 2 public forums, is, you know, the fees are under the discretion of the select board, and they'll be adjusted to support, you know, getting disposals. Voting the enterprise fund doesn't mean that you're voting up or down fees. The fees will be adjusted regardless. It's just part of the conversation because we're talking about the RTF, and just to be transparent, we're putting everything out there. But the enterprise fund is just a mechanism where every dollar that's of revenue that comes in there stays within that budget, and it's not split, you know, 61% to the schools, 39 cents to the town. And really the RTF is only about 1 to 1.5% of the entire town budget. So really that $20 bag roll that you buy, only about 20 cents goes back to the RTF in actuality, where as an enterprise fund, that would just stay in its own fund and support the operation.
Right. I'm not in any way against it. I know that most of the surrounding towns are enterprise funds. I hear people give huge kudos to Situate, but I don't think that they realized that it was an enterprise fund. I think that they just thought, oh, well, they've got their act together and it's beautiful, and why can't we be beautiful? But I just want to be able to answer basic questions when my friends and neighbors say, and how much is this? That's all. So
Sure.
that's all.
And so these flyers are up at the front booth of the RTF, and
good.
the attendant has them hand out for any questions, but it's got all the fees for the stickers, the bag fees, and then the unit price fees for, you know, each item.
Good. So are they posted or are they available to take one?
No, it's also posted on the window as you pull up. If you want one, he can hand one, or if anybody has a question, you hand it out. They're also on our website, which you said might be challenging at times to find. But there's a list of FAQ, frequently asked questions, on the website around this, and also the fees are there as well.
Okay, so please continue.
Sure. So, I mean, I just got off of Capitol. Chris asked me to jump on, so I didn't have any form of presentation ready, but, you know, I know you were talking about the enterprise fund. At the last town meeting, there was no budget. So currently we're operating without a budget. So either we're going to fund it as an enterprise fund, or plan B would be under the, you know, regular tax revenue. So it's, again, I think it makes sense as an enterprise fund where 100% of the revenue is going to stay there. You know, your water bill, your sewer bill, they don't include, you know, revenue that goes to the schools or police or fire, any of those things. They all stay within their own fund. Otherwise, it would be, you know, 39% would be about 2.5 times higher bills just to make the same amount of money to support the operation.
Okay, so do you want some questions now?
Sure.
Okay, I'm just going to go across the top line of my screen. So Mark Cameron, I didn't see exactly who put their hands up first. So Mark.
Zoom does that for you.
I know, and they rearranged them in the middle.
So, the select board recently changed the fees, which makes sense to, update and right size, current, costs. So I think there was mentioning, and so that gets us to rates that would be carried through, anticipating this goes through an enterprise fund. I think I heard that, and I'm looking for some confirmation here. If this doesn't pass and go into an enterprise fund, fees will go up even higher than they just recently did. Is that true or false?
That is true. I mean, again, it really comes down to the split. If we're going to fund this budget wholly, which is 100% of its own budget, then, but only 39% of the money that comes in, you need to make up that extra, 61%. So theoretically, it'd be, you could go 2.5 times on all these fees, and that would get you there. But, as far as what's palatable,
Yep.
and not shutting down the place, it's got to be an equilibrium.
And unlike, so water and sewer, enterprise funds have their own boards, right? There isn't going to be a board that runs the transfers, that runs the RTF. It's still going to be under the authority and jurisdiction of the select board, right? So operationally, there's no change to who sets the fees, who's running it. That just all stays the same as it's been for years, right?
Correct. I mean, obviously, we have a
Correct.
person up there running it physically, but no,
Yeah.
structurally won't change. Now, the select board still has the same authority it does. And Public Works, this will still be a branch of Public Works.
And so,
Yeah, and there was talk of an advisory committee to at the last select board meeting when they voted the fees, creating a subcommittee or an advisory committee, liaison committee that would advise the select board on RTF operations too.
and like anything, everything has its positive and negatives, right? So the negative here is that with our fiscal policy, right, the schools will be taking a bit of a hit here because the revenue that's been coming into the RTF, the gross revenue that's been coming into the RTF, 61% of that goes back to the schools. So how is the schools, how are they getting whole on this transaction so that this doesn't hurt them anymore in the future?
So the way that this year's budget was structured with an anticipation of the RTF being approved in the spring, which it was not, was that the budget was built with taking the bag fees out. So the money that was expected to come in from the paper throw was removed, and the schools were made whole for that loss. So if you actually look at how the money was allocated in the split this year, the schools actually got a 3.8% increase, and the town only 2.2%. So they were made whole for this year and going forward for that particular revenue. And so their budget this year is fine, right? I mean, everything's fine. And if there's additional revenue that came in from fees this year, we're gonna at special town meeting, we're gonna pull some of that money back out because it wasn't allocated into the budget anyway, so it could pay for the gap we have, right? Because there's not enough budget now to pay even a half year of the RTF operations. So and going forward, we'll make any other adjustments we need to. I mean, so the schools will always be made whole on this. So for the schools, it's a comparatively de minimis amount, and for the overall town, when I say de minimis, it's not a lot of money, but for the RTF, it's a huge amount of money because our whole budget's a tiny fraction of the whole town budget, right? So the problem is we were never really funding it as well as we should have, and quite frankly, when you step back at it, having a share of the paper throw bag fee go to the schools is as silly as someone paying to play football and have it going to the senior center, right? I mean, the schools already have all these elaborate funds. They have lots of them, right? For transportation and meals and athletic funds and kindergarten. So this was just also, it makes the revenues go where they really should have all along. And from an operational point of view, the schools are fine. So.
And last question, so going forward, so I would imagine that all of the compactor equipment, all of the equipment to run would be then funded through retained earnings, similar to the water and sewer. I guess one of the gray areas then becomes the Caterpillar equipment up there, right? The large heavy equipment, is that still under the DPW that would then be categorized through the DPW or?
No, so the goal is to, so we have three, I guess, major pieces of equipment. Is the yard donkey that we move the trailers with, the backhoe, and then the front end loader. Those are and they're all fairly new. The donkey is rented. So those, if we could build up a capital fund in this, it would be like an enterprise fund where we would, when we get to the point of replacement of those, which now they're brand new, one burned up, so we have a brand new unit. We'd fund that with a capital fund, so it wouldn't be under the town's capital fund, it would be under the enterprise capital fund, taking a little burden off the town capital fund.
Yes.
And that would include buildings, dumpsters, any other items up there.
Oh, it's all great. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Chris.
Courtney,
Thank you. Mark asked one or two of my questions, so I won't reiterate those. I'm trying to understand though, so follow my simple thinking here, just correct me if I'm way off here. The RTF was getting 39% of the fees, and the school has been made whole for, at least for FY26, except that later in this warrant, or already, I can't remember if we already voted, there's a portion that we have to make up for this year's operating budget. So the schools kind of weren't really made whole. Like, we're just going to make one or the other whole.
Well, it's not affecting the schools at all. So the
No, fair, but it affects the town budget. I should have said that, right?
Well,
Like, then
so
find the money.
the goal, so the goal is to fill the hole that was made, all right, with the bag fees that we didn't budget, right? So we didn't budget any revenue from these bags. It's not, so
Right.
we've generated revenue, so we want to take that and I want to put that to pay this gap, right? And hopefully that'll get us pretty close to balance with the money that was already set aside. And then for the second half of the year, because this would go into effect as of January 1, there would be no more issue. So everything is, all the revenue that comes in goes into the fund, and all the expenses stay in the fund, and there we go. And by making that change, by the way, Courtney, that I made on the revenue, it makes it forever. So their base now changed. So I changed the base number that they build the budget on for next year. So so that they've been made whole for the bag fees ongoing, right? So
Right. So the hospital was operating at 39% of the fees. And
No,
now, there was additional funds.
no, I'm just saying so the split of every dollar is 61%, 61 cents goes to the schools, 39 cents goes to the town, and that includes DPW, fire, police, senior center, all that. So of the 100%,
It's a smaller.
the RTF is about 1% to 1.5% of the entire thing. So of that dollar that came in, you're getting about a penny to a penny and a half.
So we're going from a penny to 100% of that.
what
Right.
we were
Yeah.
using, so instead of using a blend
Tax
property tax dollars and everything else that was going to the RTF, it's just going to be the fees. So it'll be basically an adjustment. So going forward, it's just going to be the fees. So we won't be affected.
No other support from the general fund.
No, that's the plan.
Right.
No other
That's what I was just trying to get clear in my mind. I appreciate that. So I guess the question for me, and I fully appreciate, there was a fire, there were some things recognized about probably better ongoing operation. It would be helpful, and I sort of go back to the prior conversation, with regard to public safety, how does, and I know the select board, so maybe I'm just missing this document. Thank you, Chris, for sending me those documents earlier regarding the budget. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how much more spending is there going to, like, FY 24, 25, 26? What would the RTF budget look like each year? How much does it grow over each year? Is this going to, and I know some of it will be capital, and I'm just trying to understand better the sort of, the operating costs ongoing, and how do we have, how does the select board rather have oversight of those costs on an ongoing basis?
So the budget would be set like all the budgets. We go through a process. They'll come to this board too. And they're all discussed. This water and sewer budgets come to this board. The RTF budget will come to this board. Town meeting approves all the budgets at the end of the day anyway. So everything gets presented, goes through the committee structures, it gets vetted. And we have an obligation to keep the money, to keep it balanced. And based on the numbers that were shared and all the memos that are up online now, there was the projected budget and I think Brian put together a business plan showing all this, how this all worked out. We feel comfortable that it'll pay for itself. And this is keeping it bare bones too, right? So there was concerns about some things that were raised at town meeting. We're keeping this to residents and then a small pilot program. Small being, small. I think we're talking about maybe 100 people as a start to see if residents in another community might want to, join in, pay a higher fee. And that's it. And then we're going to track the impact on the RTF. Does it affect how we operate? Is the revenue increase good? Does it help? Is there a detriment? And then we'll see how that goes. And it's also being run more effectively. So one of the things the fire did force us to do is take a hard look at it, find someone who actually does this for a living to run it, and then really start running it a lot more effectively. And I've worked with trash issues for my entire municipal career because it's something that we always provide or peripherally provide. That said, neither Brian or I, do trash for a living, right? Frank, who does this now, has done this for a living, understands how the flows work, understands the equipment that we needed, and it's really worked out well, I think. And I think there's more improvements to be made. One of the goals now is also because it's not directly linked to having this enterprise fund, but by having more focus on it, we should be held to a higher standard about how this works, right? It's not just the backside where they'll go on a Sunday at the last minute, drop their stuff off. We want it to really look good. We want it to function well. We want people to have good experience there. And I think this will, and I think everyone's committed to doing that going forward. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Mike and then Diane.
So I was able to find the fee schedule online, but I was not able to locate a full budget. Has there been a full P&L income statement, cash flow, even, put together, forecasted for a couple of years where you start with the expenses, and then I'm assuming that these proposed fees, are kind of the plug, right, from those expenses. Does that exist? Can we see it?
Yes.
Because, again, getting back to the numbers, what are the assumptions? How much attrition do you build in from the higher fees? Things like that. So if I missed it, I apologize, but it would be great to see that, to really, have some more conviction around, the economics of this proposal, because while we're only voting on the creation of the enterprise fund, the fees aren't just part of the discussion. It's what every taxpayer personalizes and what it means to them against the backdrop of, pressures on their budgets.
So we do. So Brian did some reports, and I did as well. So I thought they were up there. If they're not there, I will double check. I'll make sure that we send them to everybody again. But the select board has them. We've talked about them publicly. We've just
Okay.
Probably had a couple of meetings. So we have a half-year budget, a whole year budget for the 27 already projected, and we can do out years too. So the goal is actually one of the things is all the permit fees coming in the spring, pretty much, or most of them come in the spring. So that'll give a cash cushion to start into the fall. So, it'll start the fund with a little bit of extra money, hopefully, then to go in, because you'll get all the money in half the year, because none of the permit fees for this year are going into that at all.
That's short term though, Chris. Again,
Well,
what
well,
we
what
see
it-
is that there's a well thought out budget where you know what the costs are, you assume some kind of escalation in those over time, and that the fees that are being proposed, are a realistic expectation of what can be generated on the top line to fund the operation. So that's my ask. I might have missed it. To Gene's point, I'm not finding it easy to find a lot of the stuff that I would be looking for on the town's website. And so I imagine for the average citizen, they probably lose interest and move on. So that stuff has to be better, better highlighted on the website. All of this stuff has to be.
Got it.
Okay, Diane?
First, I was gonna stick up for the website because if you do a search instead of like going to a department and starting to go through, it's a lot easier to find things. But as we're talking, it probably would be worth linking from the warrant because the warrant is prominent on the homepage. It would be great to add links from the different articles in the warrant directly to the backup information that we're looking for.
That's a good idea.
We generally do that. We just haven't done that yet, and we do need to do that. So
Yeah, especially with these big conversations. And my questions specific to, I think in terms of a accounting and business structure, this makes sense. I thought it made sense a long time ago. So I'm fully supportive of the creation of an enterprise fund specifically for DPW. However, or RTF, I do think I would like to see, what is in that. So for one question I have in terms of revenues is 100% of the sticker fees going into the RTF enterprise fund
yes,
or some percentage of, okay, so that, because that sticker fee technically is also a sticker fee for other things, that's going to be revenue that's outside of the general fund and now is in the enterprise fund.
correct.
A. B, and then in terms of the cost from RTF, does this include salaries? I would imagine benefits.
Salaries, benefits, electricity, disposal
And then,
costs,
the
bags.
capital expense, which again, I'm fully in supportive of the structure, and I think the numbers would be super helpful. So
Yeah, the budget has the line items, literally.
awesome. Great, thank you.
I actually agree with Mike Barclay and Diane. I would like to see more financial information with projections. I think this is a great idea. I think it's a great way to take this out of the operating budget and repurpose the money that is there. I think we're not fully funding the RTF the way it was. So I think that would free up a little bit of money here and there. But I would like to see that extra information before I want to say we're going to do this. And also, what I saw on the website was that the general sticker would be $150 and then it would be extra for the beach.
No,
No?
It's all inclusive. Yeah, so it's 150 for the first sticker, your second vehicle is the 75. And
Okay.
then senior. is
See,
the
I was
60.
confused when I read it. So
what
I
we
think.
showed, Gene, was a comparison to other communities where,
Oh, I saw that. I saw all the different prices for
Right.
the different communities, but I thought that it said that the beach would be separate. So,
No.
Yeah,
One of the things that came out of I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, in part of that sticker discussion, so the beach is going to be included in our sticker, but the stickers for the pilot program to out-of-towners will not include the beach.
okay,
It'll be a separate sticker, and those beach stickers will not be the same. I mean, those stickers for the RTF will not be the same to access the beach.
okay. All right, good. So I think we're not ready for this one
Sure.
until next time. And if we could get that information and maybe, I don't know if you have time to get the links going on the various
Yeah.
conversation points for the warrant. I think that would be very helpful for people in the community to be able to just click something and get what they want.
One of the challenges, the warrant just not locked yet, so but as I hear you say that, we most certainly will have, the stuff already up there, I can create some temporary links or do whatever we need to do.
Well, I know that sometimes the warrant numbers change too.
Right,
so-
I know. So we just have to stay on top of that. I just don't want to confuse anybody. At the same time, I'll when I'm back at my office tomorrow, I'll send links to all of you folks and I'll send the budgets. So
That would be great. Thank you very much. So we'll wait and we'll have these two big conversations next time.
Okay.
If there are no other questions on this, we'll move to the next article,
Okay.
which is amendments to fiscal. And thank you, Brian.
I
for
don't,
those
yeah, thanks.
questions.
Um,
Amendments to fiscal 2026 operating budget, Article 8.
Hold on, let me pull it back up. Okay. Okay. So as I discussed last week, the first one is a repayment from sewer retained earnings to the general fund. The sewer had an expense that had to be made whole by the end of the fiscal year. It should have been done at town meeting, but they didn't catch it and get it to us in time, so we had to make a budget transfer, which we're allowed to do. So this is the money coming back that was owed. And the plan is to plug this back into, this is one of the other follow-ups from the failed RTF vote from the spring. Hazardous waste collection and landfill gas monitoring were moved out of the RTF into the regular DPW budget, which made sense, but they weren't funded. So this will do that. This transfer will make and it's, again, it's not money that was budgeted, it's coming in, so it's not going to affect anybody. The paper throw bag fee, this is the potential expense revenues that we'll have gotten in by the end of December. Whatever it may be, whether it's 100,000 or 80,000 or 120,000, all of it will be put into the half-year expenses for the RTF, which is in the operating budget right now. Number 3 here, the IT goes through a process called E-rate where they get money back. And this is money that's come back this year. So this will, the IT budget got trimmed a little bit. They have a pay-as-you-go line for replacing hardware throughout the town, including the schools. And this will put that $11,468 back into the central budget to do that for IT, to be able to bring their number back to allow them to purchase the laptop or the printer or the other peripheral devices that might be needed during the course of a year. Number 4 is the annual, that's the transfer we make. There's a little bit of money left over from last year that came in late. So the current transfer to 143 from Comcast and Verizon fees is $162,000. Didn't fix this. It's $344.11. So the number's missing. So makes it look. So the next one's, so we always do, we did a bigger borrowing than usual after town meeting. There was some money that was pulled for the public safety, the design and work that's being done. So there's an interest cost that has to be paid, and this is it. So that's $71,800. There was a small number that got left out. I don't quite know how. There was some kind of transcription error. So $4,125 was left out of money that was coming from the Capital Stabilization Fund to pay for the Treats Pond flood relief project. The expense is all set, but the revenue for some reason fell off by this much. So our town account caught and said, just fix it. So it's a small amount of money, but it's better to fix it. It's just $4,000 we have to worry about later. The next 2 are water retained earnings. The water department had additional expense. They have plenty of retained earnings. It's more than $1 million. It'll be certified. It'll be recertified before town meeting, but going into this year with more than $1 million. And they needed to put $100,000 back in their legal engineering section. They had some additional fees for a project they were doing, and they do not want to be drained quite so early in the year. And then extraordinary maintenance. They've had a project that went bigger than they expected, and they want to keep the money there for emergencies as they need. And if it doesn't, they don't spend it. It goes back into their retained earnings at the end of the year. So, but they want to make those transfers now, and they have the money to do it, so it makes sense. Now the last one is really dependent on, and again, I have to, we have to plug the second half of the year. So if the RTF does not, the enterprise fund does not pass again, the additional permit fees, which again are not budgeted from the increase, will have to go, will be just set aside just to pay for the RTF. Again, it wouldn't affect anybody because it's additional revenue that was not expected when the budget was planned. So if this would go, this would be done. But this would be one that would only be voted if the RTF fails, because we have to have a plan B, and this is the plan B. So the increased permit fees that the select board would then have to make, all that revenue, again, unbudgeted, would then be set aside just to pay for the RTF for the rest of the year. And those are the budget amounts. Are there any questions of me?
Questions? Wow, none? Okay, Oh, Mark has to have questions.
I'll give one, so at least Chris can respond to something. So that last one on the RTF, will that
Yep.
just get amended on town floor if the,
The motion will have an A and a B, so if the RTF passes, then it'll just be motion A, and if it's something like that, it'll be like, so it'll be clean, so then moderator will know, so it'll either be motion A or B, you know, and that'll be the only difference between them, will be that additional piece. Because we have to balance the budget, so,
thanks.
but it'll be distributed, so everyone will see.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then, excuse me. Do I have a motion to recommend Article 8 amendments to fiscal 2026 operating budget to special town meeting?
I'll move it.
Second,
Second? I didn't catch who seconded.
Mark, Cameron.
Okay, roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, I.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, I.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay. Number 9.
The next one is pretty simple. There was just that one change that I mentioned last week. Was the addition of the, give me a second. There we go. The first one was, I already mentioned, this is a new processing system the town clerk would like to use. It will save her money. Again, I know I was asked for some details I don't have yet from the clerk, what her actual savings would be from personnel. And it will streamline. I think part of it is also just, it will take some of the burden of just the processing. And so that's that cost. This is the initial setup fee, and then the first year licensing fee. There's another piece that will be in the clerk's operating budget. And then we had discussed the repairs that were done at the high school electric room. We were kind of come to the advisory committee over the summer to get a reserve fund transfer, but at this point, we couldn't get a quorum amount. It's just easier just to go to town meeting. That's the final cost. That was the work that was done, and I believe we discussed it last week. And I can have Brian come back if you want, but it basically there was an abandoned. There was a drain line that was never properly set 20 some odd years ago when that building was renovated. And the water had been just kind of leaching to the ground, but it reached a point where it couldn't do it anymore. If we had those big rains back in July, and when work got done, they found that drain line had never been connected properly, and there was an abandoned water main that was stuff that shouldn't have been there, and they managed it all fixed, and I've been told it was dry as a bone since. So that's good, because you wouldn't want to have the electrical room flood. That's probably the worst place in the building to have a flood. And then the last one, the select board has approved a Cohasset Village Historic District Study Committee, and it's a committee that is studying whether to create a historic district in the village, the Cohasset Village. Woody Chittick is the chair. He came to meet with me and said they need $10,000 for a consultant to help with the first 3 phases of the project, which is some assessment, meeting with the ownership, the owners of the buildings, and gathering some additional materials together. So it's the first phases. Providing that all comes together well, they'll come back in the spring for potentially more. They can't get CPC money for this because CPC money can only be used for actual preservation, not for the study of preservation. So that's the reason they're asking for money for this. So, and it looks like there's at least Mike has a question.
Yep, I was just gonna say, Mike has a question.
Just a quick question on the historic district study. Is this something that's intended just for commercial properties, or is this going to extend to residential properties around the village?
So this is adjacent to the existing. There's only one historic district in town. It's the Common Historic District, which is all residential. I believe this is really all commercial. I guess there's some mixed use in there technically because there are some apartments on some of the stores. But it's really commercial. This is really intended for the commercial district, not for any of the residences that abut the district. Though I think one of the considerations will be if this moves forward, this is what it was explained to me, it may make sense to merge the district into one, like a classic historic district that would be the common and the village, but that's all part of the discussion that has to take place. But this is really just looking at the village itself and the commercial buildings that are in the village.
Okay,
So this
thank you.
would set standards for,
Well, I wouldn't say it's just assessing the feasibility of it and whether or not to propose one. That would, so this is literally just the study phase, and this would pay for some of that study. If for this to ever be approved, it would eventually have to come to town meeting to be created. So
okay.
there's a whole nother.
And there wouldn't be money involved in that. It would just be creating the district and validating it, for lack of.
Right, and then there to be a set of standards that would have to be created, and then the business owner
building
follow them.
Yeah.
Like what happens on the common now, right? There are requirements about how the buildings have. It's not so much the interior, but the exteriors have to be maintained in a certain way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So do I have a motion to recommend Article 9 allocation of funds for one-time costs to special town meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, Vince, and do I have a second?
second,
Courtney?
yes.
Okay.
So
All right, roll call vote. I'm sorry, Chris?
Mark fell off. I'm trying to get him back on. There he comes. I thought there was something missing. The screen got different. Sorry, Mark.
iPad died, sorry, I had to switch over to the phone. I thought being plugged in, it wouldn't die, but I guess the Zoom call takes more juice than the plug can give it simultaneously.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, if you're at 5%, plugging it in alone is not going to solve your problems. My 12-year-old daughter taught me that. It can die despite being plugged in.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so roll call vote, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, I.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye.
Hey,
Okay.
Gene, before we move on, I just noticed down here in the Q&A section, there have been some questions submitted from those who are watching. So I don't know what I don't know if we answered all of the questions that have been asked, but I just noticed that.
Okay, let me look. I'll just read them out loud. Water and sewer are different because they are by nature limited to the citizenry. The RTF as an enterprise fund would serve residents outside of Cohasset. Is the plan for this to become a regional facility to serve Hull and generate revenue from construction and demolition contracts? Chris, can you speak to that?
The answer is no, this is not intended to become a regional facility.
Right.
By the way, there already is C&D that comes through from local residents. I mean, when you're doing like little projects around your house, so, but the facility is not designed to take, large quantities of commercial waste. It's just not. So, and there's no intention to do that.
Right, and Diane, you have your hand up.
No, I just want to add too that both water and sewer enterprise funds do get money from for example, the water department sells water to Hingham. And there are similar back and forth intermunicipal agreements that exist in the other enterprise funds. So it doesn't distinguish it.
And by the sewer department also has agreements with Hull and sends waste there, and actually has several customers in Situate. So just to be clear.
Okay, and then one more comment from me, Chris. Did I understand properly that you are going to do a test with Hull? It's not.
Yeah, it's a pilot program
To see how it works.
to see how it works, right? So, and I believe it's going to be pretty significantly limited. Brian and his team are working on coming up with how that would work. There's gonna be we're exploring how to do a traffic count as well to make sure there's no, to see what kind of impact it would be. To get a baseline and then do it afterwards. So, that's all happening now, so.
Okay. And then the next question is it legal to include all facilities, including beach parking, in the fees going to the proposed RTF Enterprise Fund? I believe they are usually created for separate utilities and recreation, with the exception of sewer and water. Many residents only use the stickers for the beach, for example. So the same way we shouldn't use the RTF funds to fund paper at the schools, should we use it to fund upkeep of the Sandy Beach parking lot? Thank you.
Well, I mean, the conversation, the public conversation was, let's keep it simple and let's have the revenues all go to one place. So quite frankly, they've all gone to one place historically, which is the general fund, and just been diffused, right? So there's really the parking, the other benefits to the sticker will just be a bonus, I guess. In that sense, but there's been no targeted revenue coming out of that fee ever, so it just kind of goes in generally. So having it all dedicated is not a problem, because there's clearly fees associated. The single biggest expense of that sticker supporting it would be the RTF. There's people pay taxes that go to different departments they never use, so it's not fundamentally different than that. So
I think that there's also a little bit of institutional knowledge that comes from other towns who probably vetted the use, because they've included their beach stickers with their RTF monies. According to the research that I did this afternoon with the comparison of other towns. So we might want to look into that, but I don't see it as a problem.
No, it's not. There's no issue of which I am aware, and this is what was asked for. In effect, there were people during the public meetings that took place at the end of August, beginning of September at the RTF, that said, "Just have it all go to the RTF, make it simple." So the select board said, "Do that." So that's how we're designing it. So.
Okay, and then this last question is kind of open-ended, so I don't really understand it. How was free cash used?
There's a number of different places where it's being spent. The single biggest one being the transfer to the stabilization fund for OPEB. That's the biggest use of it right now. And then the unpaid bills are being paid with free cash, and there's and a couple of the one-time costs are that way too. So free cash will be certified in advance of town meeting. So, and we're not gonna spend all of it at all. So the goal was to have a chunk of money available for other expenses
and emergencies.
Yeah, I mean, free cash is often used for capital and one-time things. That we don't use free cash for operating expenses generally, like staff. We don't use it for things like that, but it's often used for one-time costs and things like that.
And it's important for people to realize that anytime that money is used, it has to be voted. So
free cash has to be voted by town meeting. Yeah, we can't.
Right. So it's not just an open checkbook, which it has to be vetted and voted.
Yeah.
Okay. So allocation of funds for one-time cost. I don't think I finished the roll call, did I? No, I didn't. I'm just going to do it again, just in case. Mike Barclay.
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron.
Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Michael Flaherty.
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Sorry about that. Diane Kennedy, I was on mute.
Courtney Murphy.
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi.
Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton.
Vince Thornton, aye.
And Gina Stino, aye. Thanks for pointing that out, Mike.
I'm going to propose that you just pass on 10. We'll get back to it next week, because I haven't given you enough information, so you can't do anything with it anyway. So
The next one?
yeah.
Okay.
I have to give you the actual language, which isn't there yet. So I have to bounce it off council. So
Okay, and Article 11?
that's the one we talked about last week.
Yep.
This allows if the town votes to accept this, the select board, at the request of a holder of a malt and wine on premises license, can convert it up to an all alcohol license just for that holder for the period of time the holder has it. And then it would revert back to malt and wine when it gets returned. It can't be transferred to anybody else. So it would only be for the applicant at the time. So the select board would decide to grant it. Doesn't give us any more licenses. There is a separate bill in Beacon Hill to grant the town 5 additional on-premises all alcohol licenses, but this doesn't have any impact on that. It just allows the ones that already exist, which are all given out, to be fungible if the holders wanted to.
Okay, are there any more questions on this one? Geez. Things have a mind of their own. No questions? Okay, so do I have a motion to recommend Article 11, accept Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12D, to allow on-premises wine and malt licenses to be traded in for a on-premises all alcohol beverage license? Do I have?
I'll
a
move
mo-
it. I'll move it,
Second.
Jean, Diane.
Second.
And Mark Maggi. Okay, roll call, please. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, I.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, I.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Okay,
Article 12 is another kind of housekeeping article. So the town long ago adopted a provision that allows people who do not pay their water bills for the treasurer collector to lien them on their taxes, so it gets automatically collected. We've always piggybacked sewer on water because they're done the same. So council said, you probably should adopt. We went back and we haven't been able to find that the town adopted the sewer lien provision, which came later than the water lien provision. So the council said, you probably should just do this. It's a good thing just to have the legal belts and suspenders done. So that's why it's on here. This just formalizes something we're already doing.
okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Then could I have a motion to recommend Article 12, acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 83, Section 16A to 16F, sewer lien to special town meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, so was that Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron and Mike Barclay.
Mike Barclay? Roll call. Mike Barclay,
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron,
Mark Cameron, I.
Tom Callahan,
Tom Callahan, I.
Michael Flaherty,
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy,
Diane Kennedy, I.
Courtney Murphy,
Courtney Murphy, I.
Mark Maggi,
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton,
Vince Thornton, aye.
and Gina Stino, aye. Great, thank you. Article 13, solar power electric generation.
So I haven't circled back up with Tanya Bodell on this. I'm not sure where the school committee is on this right now. I don't think there's necessarily an objection, but I'm not sure that they've opined on this yet. They're kind of an important player on this. So I need to follow back up with Tanya. So
Okay, maybe see if she can come next time.
I think it'll be helpful anyway, but it's again, it's simply to make something possible. At the same time, the school committee has to be interested in doing it.
Right, and we had done this way back when, and it's expired because we talked about this the last time. I think the roofs were not in good enough shape to allow for it. So we just kind of didn't do anything with it, and we went with the capped landfill instead. So we'll wait on that.
Now you're up to Article 14, which is citizen petition. I see Mr. Ashton in the audience.
Okay.
Into a panelist, and you can give his presentation and ask him questions.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. May I share my screen?
yes.
Oh, it says not turned on, but I just sent a request.
Okay. Typically, citizens petitions have a list of people who've signed. But I see that this one doesn't. I'm just curious.
I think it's just,
Oh,
I just think it hasn't caught up. There's clearly, there's a list of petitioners, so.
Oh, I'm sure.
What happens,
There's
Mr. Ashton?
supposed
is
to
that
be
the-
100 signatures for.
Yeah, the first 10 are always in the warrant, and they're just not, the warrant has been finalized, so.
Yeah.
So that will happen, it just doesn't happen.
Okay. And thanks for that clarification, Tom.
Well, I'd like to know if they have 100.
We have 124 certified. You guys see my screen?
Yes.
So, as I said, Will Ashton, 125 Dome Street. I'm the proponent for the citizens petition for tuition-free full-day kindergarten. This is just one of a group of issues that shouldn't be studied in isolation, like we've heard tonight on a number of things. Every budget decision, capital or operating, affects every other decision across town. I'm only going to discuss our reasoning behind kindergarten today, but I welcome a discussion on any other issues that affect these. Like I heard tonight about my drawing markups for the public safety building, I can help educate you on the difference between a drawing markup and a construction document, if that's helpful.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about your.
Also, I want to clear up some technical items that were brought up last week that I have discussed with town council. Yes, this petition can only adjust the budget for 1 year at a time. And yes, the petition cannot direct the school committee on how to use the funds allocated to the schools. Town council recommended against rewording it though, because it was signed with the wording that you see in the warrant. And instead clarify those things at town meeting. That being said, this petition was signed by about 150 people, of which 124 of those were authorized by the town clerk. So that clearly they're supportive of the concept, and the school committee reallocating funds or the budget being changed back the following year would go against everything a citizen's petition stands for, and this could just be reintroduced annually if needed. 95% of school districts in Massachusetts already have free full-day kindergarten. It's not an issue of town size, student population, or commercial tax base. Towns facing all those challenges have made it work. Public education conceptually should be free. Not only that, but in this town specifically, we can afford it and we choose not to. We're in the top 10% of towns in the state in spending per capita. Some people say, well, that's because we're a small town, but if you control for population and only include towns plus or minus 3,000 people, we're in the top 9%. The majority of the towns ahead of us are vacation areas with few permanent residents: Nantucket, Provincetown, Truro, Edgartown, Wellfleet. And as you can see on this chart, peer towns were nearly the highest in our citizen funding. And just a note on that, all the charts that I have in here are organized in the same order for the towns so that they can be compared one to the other. These peer towns were chosen based on a number of factors like population, socioeconomic, and geographic area. This slide shows total spending per capita of each of these towns in 5 areas: education, police, fire, benefits, and administration. For purposes of comparison, because some towns align budgets differently, administration is to include select board, town manager, administrator, human resources, and IT. You can kind of start to see a trend in spending here, but it becomes more obvious as we dig in. We have a spending problem, and it's not our schools. In the last 6 years, Cohasset school budget has increased 22%, while revenue has increased 24%. And as you can see on the left, we're near the median of our peer towns in spending both per student and per capita. On the right, it's clear that we significantly exceed our peers in these 4 areas. And as Chair Estino said, we need to live within our means. As we can see on the left here, we significantly exceed our peer towns in both administrative spending overall and very specifically in IT. Not only are we outspending, but over the past 6 years, as you can see on the right, we've significantly increased spending in these areas. And I know last week, Mr. Senior said that if the CTO asks for money for cybersecurity, he can't say no. But is our cybersecurity 3 or 4 times better than all these other towns? Because we're spending 3 or 4 times more than they are. Also, I added a note from Hamilton's annual report. Because I'm not here just to point out flaws, but to help find solutions as well. They've only experienced marginal increases in IT costs based on their subscription contracts because they're part of an IT collaborative that helps realize shared expense savings in cybersecurity and fiber network improvements. Next, we looked at public safety, specifically fire and police. 6 years ago, the police and fire had nearly the same budget. Since then, the town's population has grown by about 4%, but the police budget has grown by 40% and now exceeds the fire budget by nearly $500,000. As you can see on the top right, on a per capita basis, we have the highest spending of all our peer towns. But public safety is also largely a factor of land area as well, which we've seen in the call for a satellite fire station. Our spending per square mile starts to really jump in the 2 metrics at the bottom because we have such a small land area in our town. You'll notice 2 other outliers here, Hingham and Hanover, whose fire costs are driven largely by a large commercial base that requires more intense permitting and inspections for fire alarm and sprinkler systems, which Cohasset doesn't have. We hear a lot about the lack of a commercial tax base, but not the cost of administering those commercial properties. These data show that increases in costs for that commercial tax base, but not the same increases in revenues that people often talk about. Lastly, we noticed that not only is our health insurance spending spiked, which everybody knows, but also we're spending a lot more per capita than our peer towns. And this is just preliminary because we only started to dive into this. Some towns show 0 because it's difficult to separate insurance from their benefits. But of note, Cohasset's budget here doesn't even include the additional $800,000 that Select proposed last week to add to the budget. But the only reason I show this is because there's potential savings we're leaving on the table. Switching to GIC potentially could net the town and the employees savings for substantially the same coverage. Definitely not an expert on health insurance, but I just think it's worth studying by someone that is. So ultimately, it's not that we're opposed to all new taxes or fees. It's not just about kindergarten. It's that we think it's irresponsible to pull on these revenue levers for increased administrative operating budgets when we know we have large capital projects in the near term and a school budget that's already stretched. One of this committee's responsibilities is to report recommendations that are deemed to be in the best interest of the town, and continuing outsized operating spending is not in that interest. We already offloaded roads and school facilities onto the taxpayers via stabilization funds. Then we offloaded school costs via fees. Now we're proposing to offload the RTF burden, all while pushing through an overscope public safety building. This petition is just one piece of trying to achieve operating budget accountability to ensure we can fund future expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you please send your documents to us?
Yes.
Just send them to Tracy Connors and
Yep.
distribute them for us. I hope you don't mind me assigning that to her, Chris.
She's actually out for a couple of days, so if you can just send it to the town manager email, that would be best, because I know that gets several of us touched, so that way we're sure it gets distributed. If it goes to
I do just have one question though about that. Will they be reused with markups from someone from the town to put onto 143 or not?
No, we don't run the town on Facebook.
the request from the chair was to have this redistributed to the members, and that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
And I don't have a Facebook account, Mr. Ashton. So
I'm sure you all saw what the police did, so I would appreciate that not happening again, because I'm just trying to work for the best interest of the town here.
I have to say I have a little institutional knowledge about the schools after 9 years on the school committee. And my committee was the committee that implemented full day kindergarten for a fee. I'm sure you know that the state requires that we offer half day kindergarten, and it was a big discussion. There were a lot of children. We didn't want to increase class sizes. So we needed to raise funds in order to facilitate that. People were very happy with the decision. We had numerous meetings about it with a lot of people in the audience. I actually granted a kindergarten specific meeting for parents to come and be heard. People were upset because they were going to have to pay for daycare. We all felt that need. But over the past years, enrollment has dropped. So, but the head count has not. The head count continues to go up. So we need, unfortunately, the current superintendent inherited a budget that was problematic and needed to have some changes done. And as you listened last week, we did take care of some of those issues, but full day kindergarten for free, completely free, was not in that mix. I would suggest that you speak to the school committee, see if there's a way that they can figure out for the next budget how to make this happen. Maybe assess the head count issue and the per student, the teachers per student, and see if there's some kind of a way that that can be adjusted.
I've also brought that up as well.
Okay, all right. I mean, like I said, I sat in that seat for 9 years. There were a lot of hard discussions, and I brought 2 kids up in this school district. So, you know, we feel your pain. We really do. But this year's school budget was painful for us. So we need to figure out a way to work together to fix it. And I would love to have full day kindergarten free, but, and that's a big but, we have to figure out everything around it before we can, before you folks and the school committee can take care of that. So I do appreciate all the time that you put into this, and I would like to review your information, and then we'll chat about it another night.
Sure.
Okay? We're not working against you. We're trying to work with you and make sure that all of this stuff is done right and be fiscally responsible. Diane, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I just have a somewhat of a point of order, a loose point of order, which is I really appreciate the charts that you put forth. And we used to have an annual, and we still do to some degree, have an annual kind of budget presentation. And those are the kinds of numbers and data points. And there's a lot of things I was like, but, you know, I want to talk about that. That's really good. But that's really in our budget prep phase that we should be talking about that in January, February. So right now, my understanding is instead of talking about that, we have in front of us a citizens petition to make some mid-year budget changes and give the school, and what we'd be doing, if I understand the mechanics of this correctly, we would be giving the school an additional $300,000 back into their budget without any legal way to compel them to spend that money. And I would imagine that they wouldn't spend it on full day kindergarten, and it would actually end up being a reimbursement to those who've already paid for the full day for the full year. So there's a lot of mechanics there. And, I think our discussion should strictly stay with the citizens petition, what it would mean if it were to go forward, and the impact it would have just right now in the budget numbers that we have. I think the data points that you bring up are all things we need to discuss as a community as we put forward new budgets going into the future. So, I respect that you put them together. Thank you. And hopefully we can have those discussions in the future. But right now, I think the only thing in front of us is whether we're gonna take money out of the mid-year town budget and give it to the school committee to spend as they want to. Theoretically, the petitioners have an idea of how that should be spent, but I don't know that the school committee would necessarily, I know they wouldn't be compelled to do it that way, and I don't know that that would be their priority, so.
Mark?
Yeah, excuse me, appreciate the energy put into it all and the care and thought. But again, to echo Diane's comments, regardless of how this committee votes and how town meeting votes, it in no way, shape or form does it force the school committee to provide full day kindergarten. And I think the energy really should be in spending time with the school committee, because a citizen's petition isn't the right avenue, in my opinion, to get there without their commitment to this subject. So I think there'd be a lot of people that would feel slighted and taken advantage of if this was to pass and still not get free kindergarten. That would be misleading. So I think it's from that perspective, I think that it's very problematic because there is absolutely no way that the town government, the select board, or the advisory committee here can force the school committee to provide free all-day kindergarten. So that's just on an administrative side. And I really think that, doing that in mid-season budget is even further problematic. These are things that really need to be tended to because ahead of the budget season, because now if something like this was to happen, we have to correct going back. So we have to overcorrect for the rest of the fiscal year, which then puts us in a unfavorable position going into the next fiscal year because now we're undercommitted. So it doesn't allow us to make a smooth shift from A to B. We're taking a little zigzag over to D here, if you will. And it's just to some of the stats here. I mean, we're a small town. We're a very small town. And unfortunately, scale of economy comes into play, right? So fire station, police station, unfortunately, some of these things, a town hall, right? It costs more for a smaller town than it does for a larger population town per capita. So I think that, that's something that also needs to be recognized.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
Because there are smaller towns and larger towns in all those statistics. So I don't think that what you've brought up is a valid point.
Sure, then sure, that's absolutely your position to do so. And again, you mentioned doing this and somehow helping with the future capital projects and the strapped school budget. I don't see how this is going to help the school budget if they're going to get $300,000 for something that costs $300,000. And if it costs more than $300,000 and it continues to rise as teacher fees and union contracts increase, that's going to only create a larger problem for the schools going forward. So I see this as a weight being put on their shoulders, not taken off. And for context, I say this as I have a child in 4th grade, paid for kindergarten here in Cohasset, and I have a child in the pre-K at Osgood right now who will be going to kindergarten next year.
I'll just clarify that the $300,000 that the school committee added in fees is in no way tied to the cost of running kindergarten. It was just an amount that they chose because that was the budget hole. So it's not tied to any real cost.
But it's not, my point is, it's not going to help them. It may only create a larger deficit for the school.
How can more money create a deficit?
If running free all day kindergarten costs more than $300,000 and they're only getting $300,000, then it's going to cost them more money.
Every kid is enrolled in full day kindergarten this year, even though it costs money. So they're already spending that cost.
It doesn't, it's irrelevant.
Okay. We could, sure.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. And I would appreciate getting those documents.
You got it.
I don't think we're going to take any action tonight.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we have more questions.
I think Corey was just saying schools have not heard this yet.
Okay, so the school committee has not heard this proposal?
I think that was at the time of the solar on the roofs.
Oh,
I have to double check, but
Yeah, I
Oh,
think that's
okay.
right.
I think that was the prior question or the prior item.
Okay, thanks, Courtney.
I'm pretty sure.
Why is the advisory committee asking just 100 families in town? The advisory committee has not asked for anything. This was presented by the people who signed the citizens petition. 100 families in town, the families with young children, to shoulder the burden of fixing the school budget deficit instead of treating tuition-free full-day kindergarten as the shared public good it is. Where do you stand philosophically? Should the parents of 5-year-olds subsidize the shortfalls? No, I think that the school committee needs to go back and sharpen their pencils and figure out if there's a way to do this within the confines of their budget. And I think that that's what you were asking, Mark, that they needed to go back and take a look. And then could the money come from free cash? That's not a good answer. And Corey did confirm that it was in relation to solar. Okay. Diane?
Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate, maybe double down on my earlier point, which is, I think there was a lot of information in the charts. I think it's irrelevant. I think that's a discussion about how we allocate our resources as we plan out a full budget year. And there's valid things and invalid things and things we might argue and things we might philosophically disagree on. I think this, I really caution us and implore that we stay very focused on the specific request here, because that is our role, is to make advisory opinions to the community for their consideration at town meeting. So in this case, it is the request is, and I think our discussion needs to focus going forward specifically on, this $300,000 request for money, for money from the town side budget to hand over to the schools midway. So that's, through the year to supplement the school budget for them to make a decision as to what they might do with it. Presumably, the thought behind this is that they would reimburse families that have spent the money. And I think we need to talk about and think about the questions of what is that impact to the town budget to take $300,000 out of it. There's very specific things in the narrative, in the description, but that isn't necessarily prescriptive, I don't think. I think the language of the motion is just that the municipal budget would take $300,000. I mean, practically speaking, right? The municipal budget would take $300,000 and give it to the schools. What would the schools do? And what does that mean? Do they send refunds to people? And then what happens next year? But that's where I want to make sure we focus, because if we get going down all these paths about the spend in public safety and the scale of economies of scale in other departments, we're missing, I think, the focus that we need to keep specifically on this article. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, Courtney and then Mike.
Yeah, I would certainly take Diane's point with regard to the challenges in the way that this is formulated, this particular question. But I think I disagree with you with regard to the value of the overall data in the longer term. And I think as we talked about public safety, as we talked about even RTF, multiple of us asked for multi-year budget projections and how do we think about the long term and how do we think about the context and how the town is coming together, you know, on a sort of more holistic basis. I get that it is one question that we have to address, and believe me, it would not be the way that I would want to see that happen. But I do see there's a lot of value in thinking, you know, more broadly about the data. And, you know, there was a note, I meant to mention this earlier, but I think last night in the select board discussion around the public safety facility, there one thing that I really disagree with that there was an inability to benchmark the town. And like the way that I run my businesses, you got to benchmark everything. You got to figure out where you stand on a whole bunch of metrics to determine how you're going to be successful. So I think it's valuable. It's not the be all end all though. And I'm certainly not sitting here saying it's accurate or not, because I have not done the analysis or validated it, but I think there is value to it.
Thank you. To go back to the first part of your comment too, though, is that the schools need to really take a good hard look and do their projections.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, as I noted, the enrollment is declining, and it's declined since 2019. In 2018, 17 or 18, it started to decline. We used to have 1,600 kids here. We have under 1,400 now. And we don't have any information. We haven't gotten any information, any hard facts on what the enrollment looks like, how many students per grade, how many teachers. We haven't received that. We keep asking for it and we don't get it. So it's a problem. And I think that the school committee, as I said, needs to sharpen their pencils and work on their budget for the next year and figure out how to make this happen. I don't disagree that it's a great thing to have kids in kindergarten go all day, but I've also subbed in a kindergarten class. There are 2 recesses. There's lunch, there's rest time. There are a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces in a full day kindergarten. So I think that it's interesting that I think the interest is for them to go back and look at the budget. And we do have a new superintendent, so I'm sure she's already looking at that. Mike, and then Diane again.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark brought up a really great point about, I don't think we can compel the school committee to do anything. I don't think we have the ability to do that. So I think that's a really important point. They set their budget and we vote on it, and we don't have the ability to tell them what to do, even if we gave them the 300,000. And then just on the benchmarking stuff, benchmarking's data. It doesn't analyze, I work in a data-driven business. Data is just data. And if you don't scrutinize it, analyze it, look at the nuances, you can throw a bunch of data on a sheet and tell any story you want. And so that's where, I mean, there's a lot, and obviously there's a lot of work put into this. I respect that, but let's not get too caught up on benchmarking being some great directional means of decision making.
Diane.
Just, I have a question, and then on when Mike just said we can't compel, we as town meeting, and not even this committee, like town meeting can't compel how the school, they get their chunk of money and they have to make their priorities based on their educational initiatives. And that's why they're there. The question, I just want to follow up on a data point that Mr. Ashton brought up, which was confirming that 100% of the eligible kindergartners are enrolled in full day kindergarten. Is that correct? Do we know that that's a fact?
I believe that's my understanding, yeah.
You know what? I heard something from someone that said that their child goes for half day.
This is something that I would implore our school committee friends to take up, because that's a pretty significant commitment on the part of parents for the value of full day kindergarten. So anyway.
When my kids were not much out of this age, that like it was always literally like one kid per age group that was not doing full day kindergarten.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. It's a
But
very,
it's pretty universal.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
thank you. Chris?
If I might just add a couple of quick points. So I did a lot of benchmarking in my prior community, and we've tried to do that same thing here. And we actually did a study a couple of years ago with the MAPC, and some of the communities we tried to benchmark with are on the North Shore. Some of the ones that have been presented. And one of the struggles we have to do the benchmarking is we operated incredibly differently. For example, very few of the North Shore communities have full-time fire departments. They just don't. They have call fire departments. And that's an entirely different model. You know, they may have a full-time chief, maybe, and they may have maybe one full-time paramedic. Another thing they also do is they almost all contract out for their medical. So they don't have a fire department and a paramedic system like we do. They have a private contractor that does those things. So it was very hard to benchmark against them. Some of the communities don't have full-time policing, if you can believe that. They have contracts with other communities to provide that. And many of them had regional school districts. So, which again, it's very, you can't, when you talk about healthcare comparisons, if you're not insuring 300 teachers, well, your costs are going to be less because the payment is coming in a different way. So it's not even a real comparison when you're not, I've never seen it. I mean, and by the way, I'm a big believer in benchmarking. I want to be, so Courtney, I'm 100% with you. So I'd love to talk to you about that offline someday, and trying to find ways that we can really show how we're doing things effectively. I'm a big believer in, you know, showing value for the money and making sure that we're being effective at what we do. One of the things I found though is that it's also hard. You have to do the comparisons sometimes in a different way because, like I said, there's such variability, and even there's a lot of the communities do not have water or sewer. I mean, Carlisle's. I was sitting with the town manager of Carlisle the other day at an event, and they use us and we benchmark, I think, on educational statistics sometimes. There's some demographic comparisons. They have a call fire department, a regional school district, and no water and sewer plants. So, I mean, everything's well and septic. So there's really no, I mean, what they do and what we do are entirely different on a day-to-day basis because of how they operate. And again, so it becomes, when you drill down, a lot of the numbers that have been thrown out are just fact. They're things that are pulled off the internet. You know, you throw a ChatGPT search, you pull stuff, it looks pretty, but you have to really deep dive, and it's a challenge, to be honest. And I'm happy to talk to anybody offline about this, but I some of the numbers that say per capita healthcare spending, that doesn't mean anything. And a per square mile, I mean, who benchmarks on per square mile? Chelsea would be the most expensive place on the earth. They have 1 square mile and they have everything, right? That's not a way to benchmark stuff. I mean, I believe in benchmarking, but it's how quickly you get to a call. Okay. How many people do you serve lunch to? How many kids become National Merit Scholarship winners? There's 1,000 legitimate benchmarks, but just data to throw out there as a comparison isn't that. And I am deeply concerned also about process. There's an elaborate budget process. We go for months, public conversations, all kinds of stuff, to come at the past, 6 months into the year and say, guess what? I'm going to take money from already established budgets and put it somewhere else. I don't want to have to ever go back into the departments and say, okay, Chief Quigley, who are we laying off? What aren't we going to be doing? Because that's what we'd have to do.
Chris, it's inappropriate for them to suggest that we take employees from other cost centers to cover what they want to make happen. It doesn't compute.
And again, it's not about all day kindergarten. I have no position. I mean, that's a policy decision for the school committee to make. And if they want to make it a priority to fund, then they make it a priority to fund. I mean, I don't have any position on that at all as the town manager.
Right.
What I have a position on is making sure that things work functionally. And then when the community says spend money here, we spend the money there effectively and efficiently. And if they say don't spend money there, we don't spend money there, right? But to do something like this, to fund it this way is just not the right way to do it. I mean, that's.
And to go back to your benchmarking comment. Sorry, it's getting late. We did all of that in the school committee, and we picked, I think it was 5 towns that were similar socioeconomically. It wasn't just surrounding towns, because that doesn't give you a real feel for what you're looking at. You're looking at, cost of living, median income, price of houses, how many children. There are lots of different things to benchmark. And almost none of those communities were around here. It was like Dover, and because they all fit the profile of what we were benchmarking. So there's a lot that has to go into this to make this work. And that's the school committee's job. I mean, we did it. So, Diane, you had
But the benchmark too, by the way, Gene, I don't mean to belabor this point. An educational achievement benchmark is very different than a how do you get there benchmark, right? I mean, you can have a small district that has incredible results and a big district that has poor results. And if you look at the per capita amount of spending, that may be meaningless. It's how you spend the money and what the results you get at the end of the day is.
But a lot of people here have young children, and I don't know if you understand those best schools in Massachusetts metrics. Okay, they change every year what they're looking at. I was shocked when I found this out. There's a whole different list of criteria from year to year that they're looking at. It's not the same every year after year after year. So those numbers might be based on how many kids get into Ivy League schools one year, and how many kids had great SAT scores the next. But those things, the SAT scores weren't in the last year's metrics for those. So it's interesting for you to look at the background of what those best schools reports look at. And it's kind of strange the way they do them. Just saying. Diane.
So 2 things. One is I'm jumping out of my skin because I love these conversations. I love budget policy. Like, what do we value? What do we prioritize? Do we, et cetera, et cetera. I just think for right now with a citizens petition mid-year and a budget year, it's probably not exactly the right time. And then I was also going to be really rude and potentially call for a motion to adjourn. I don't know if we're done, but I think we could sit here and talk about this forever and ever.
Call the question.
I was thinking, do I call the question? But there's no question on right. So anyway.
Okay, so it's 9:40. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I would say Diane wants to make that motion.
So moved.
And who wants to second?
Second.
Who did the second?
Mike.
Okay.
Everybody.
Really, this was a long meeting. Sorry, guys. I pride myself on 1-hour meetings, but at the beginning of the warrant process, that doesn't happen. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. So roll call, please. Mike Barclay.
Mike Barclay, aye.
Mark Cameron.
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tom Callahan.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Michael Flaherty.
Michael Flaherty, aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Courtney Murphy.
Courtney Murphy, aye.
Mark Maggi.
Mark Maggi, aye.
Vince Thornton.
Vince Thornton, aye.
And Gina Stino, aye. And we will see you next week on Wednesday at 7. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks.